Hey, in this video, let's go ahead and take a hand from Maya that is already part of Maya. All you need to do is just get it from the content browser. So if I click on this button here, this is in my poly modeling tab under modeling section. If you click on this little button here, you should see all of these options. One of them under modeling, if you open up modeling and go to bipads, right? You can see that there is all these different options for body types to use as base meshes. So in this tutorial, what I would like to do is let's grab a hand like this arm, and just for fun, let's go ahead and rig this. So maybe for some reason, maybe you need a statue of a peace sign or some sort of a gesture made with the hand. And it would be really cool to just, as an exercise, to rig this so we can have some options. So I'm going to double click on this. As soon as I do, this shows up on my grid. I can, of course, let's go ahead and move this up. And one thing I'm not interested in, just for the sake of this exercise, I don't really need the rest of the arm. So what I would like to do is, I'm just gonna use the hand. So I'm gonna delete probably like all the way to here. Like I'm trying to imagine, let's say this is just a huge statue on the middle of a city, and it's just gonna be a hand throwing up a peace sign. That's at least my vision for this exercise. Now, one thing that I'm not a big fan of is this color that they give you. So I'm gonna right click and go to material attributes, and sometimes if it doesn't show up, just do it again, material attributes. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to reset this color to just be something like gray, something a little more neutral. Okay, so I have my hand. If I press spacebar, I can also press Shift A in all the viewports. And I can see that this is the ground here, so I'm actually gonna move this down and do Shift A again. And now I have kind of a hand. Okay, so now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna turn this on, wireframe unshaded, so I can see the topology. And then keep in mind, if this was if you need this to be higher poly for preview, whatever the reason is, press 3. So this is currently what the smooth version of the same hand would be. If this was if you're putting this into a game engine, obviously you don't want to do that. You want to leave it at this. And this is nice because it's super low poly and clean. If you wanted to, add some fingernails to it or model something else, you could. You can even bring this into ZBrush and add some detail to it. But again, in this for this exercise, I just want to rig this up. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. So to get started, I'm going to jump into my front view right here, and I want to make sure that I'm not selecting my hand as I'm doing the joints. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this button here to unselect the mesh. Now you can see I can't select it because mesh is not selected. Again, I really do like my wireframes. And next, let's go ahead and just go into our rigging and go into, let's go into skeleton, create joints, and let's take a look at what's going on here. I'm just gonna reset this, so this is just gonna be default, same as yours. And let's just start creating joints. So when I create joints, I do like this button on as well, X-ray button. And let's just figure out the flow. So for the index finger, I'm just gonna click here, and let's figure out what the bend is. So maybe we have 2 joints and then 1 on top, right? So you can look at your own finger, obviously. So you have a bend here, you have another bend here, and then you have the top joint. So boom, this is our index finger. Nice and easy. Once we've done that, let's create the next one. I'm gonna create the same thing here. Do something like this, press enter, grab my joints again and keep doing it. So let's do one more. All right, so these are our fingers. Now for the thumb, obviously the thumb only has one bend, or one at the base and then one in the middle and then one on top. If you are a human, that's how your thumb bends. And if you're not, then well, I don't know where to take this joke. All right, so then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take and link these to a hand, right? So for example, right now I have all these 5 fingers, but they're all kind of floating in the air, right? So they're not really connected to anything. So what we want to do is we want to create another joint somewhere in the wrist, I think is where I'm going to put it, right here. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this one, hold down the shift key and go around and select the rest of them, and then select the one that I want to connect to, and then just press P on my keyboard. Now, as soon as you press P on your keyboard, you can see that these lines are all connecting the joint, right? And the cool thing is now, if you click on the wrist, it's going to select all the 5 fingers at once. But if you click on each finger individually, you see you have control of each finger without affecting anyone else. So make sure that that's the flow that you have as well, right? All right, cool. We do have a joint. We could put one here as well, just because we do have this chunk of the wrist. And again, select the child, then select the parent, and then just press P. So again, check this out, and I have this flow going this way. You can see the joints are kind of pointing this way. So that means if I select this one, the entire hand is selected. If I select just this part, then only this section is selected. And if I select the thumb or anything above it, then only that section will be connected, right? So selected. So that's the whole concept of the flow of the joint. All right, easy enough. So now let's just go ahead and, in this view, this looks great, right? So let's press spacebar and go into our perspective view and check this out. So clearly when we created our joints, the hand that they gave us is a little bent. So we kind of have to match the flow of their mesh, right? So I'm gonna, again, click on this button here so I can see my joints. And let's just start slowly moving them. I'm gonna grab my move tool, and I am in the object mode. And just like, what I would like to do is I wanna, actually, I think in the world is gonna be a little bit easier for me. I wanna move this joint sort of in the middle, right, of this thumb. So you wanna do that. And then here's my trick. The way I do it is, if I in the middle of the base of the joint from each angle, so you can see if I rotate this around, it seems like it's about in the middle, right? It doesn't need to be exactly perfect, but this is about the middle. And then what I do is I go to the top of the finger, kind of right here, and then I just kind of move this into position. So that's my own personal little trick, and that should work for us, right? So we're just doing a very simple, kind of a cheap rigging. So then the same thing here, I'm gonna make sure that this is sort of at the base. So maybe move it into position a little better, grab my rotate tool, and same thing, I'm gonna go to the top of the finger and just kind of move it into place. So, good enough. I'm gonna do the same thing here. This one could come forward just a little bit. And let's just quickly do the rest to all of them. This one Could go back a little bit. All right, let's go ahead and do this one. Now keep in mind, when I'm rotating them, I'm only trying to rotate them on one axis, which is this one. So I'm not like moving them all over the place. I'm trying really hard to maintain the flow, which is going to be important once you rig it. You do want to keep that in mind, right? So if you, for example, begin to rotate the joints like in some crazy way and then you align them, you know, like this, later it's going to be harder for you to actually bend it, right? So even right now, if I go to my object mode, I could see that when I'm bending my thumb, this is the bend I'm getting, and maybe this is not what I want, right? So you could actually rotate this, and now if you're bending your thumb, right, it would go this way. So it's just common sense, right? Just pay attention to how your joints are being rotated. So this clearly makes sense, right? And so does this, right? So it just has to make sense. All right, so once you align your joints and everything looks good, now we just simply have to bind them to the rig. So I'm gonna select my chain here with all the joints. I'm gonna hold on the shift key, but I do need to turn this back on. I'm gonna hold on the shift key and select my mesh of the hand. And now I'm gonna go to skinning, bind skinning, and let's click on these little bind options. And let's go ahead and reset this. All right, and then for the hand to work well, one of the things I found personally is geodesic should work just fine, because it kind of respects the fingers, and it does a nice job linking them without affecting the neighbors. So I'm just gonna tone this down till maybe like 3, and that's the only difference I'm gonna do. And I'm gonna do the only settings I'm gonna change, and then I'm gonna say apply and close. All right, check this out. So now if we grab this thumb and attempt to move it, you can see that it's moving perfectly. Let's go ahead and try this one. And this is what I was telling you, geodesic, see how it's not affecting the finger next to you, which is really nice, right? Same thing here. So now essentially this hand is rigged, and we can pose it into whatever we want. So if I turn off the mesh and maybe let's throw up a peace sign, I'm going to leave these 2 fingers up. Maybe I can actually do something like this, and if I wanted to, I can straighten this up a little. All right, then I can just straighten this a little, and for the peace sign to work, this needs to come down. Alright, so we could bend this a little bit too. Now I'm trying to do this fast, but obviously if you take your time, you can make it look really nice. So then we're gonna bend this in. And the cool thing about this is too, if you wanted to change the shape, you're welcome to also move the joint, right? And just kind of get them into a better position, especially if you're just doing something as simple as just doing a hand gesture, right? It's not really a full character, so the rules don't really apply to us as much when we're doing this kind of stuff. And there it is. So this is how easy and simple it is to take a hand and rig it for whatever reason. Now, if I had to bring this into a game engine, obviously I would not bring the joints in unless, you know, the hand is animated. But let's assume this is kind of like a statue, and you no longer need the joints. We just needed them to pose the fingers, but now we're done. So we can just select both of them and then go to Edit, Delete All by Type History. And now if we've done that, when we select our joints in the outliner, we can just simply press Delete key, and that's going to maintain the shape of the mesh, right? So now essentially this pose was baked into the mesh. So if you wanted to export this out as a game model, that would make more sense. Again, you can press 3. It doesn't look nice. If you're not using it as a game model, like this makes sense because this kind of is thicker. So like a low poly game model, this makes sense. If you press 3 and you're using it for animation, maybe this seems a little too thin. One of the tricks that you could do is just go to verts mode, select all of your points, and then grab your move tool, go to normals, and just grab the end one, and you can puff it up, you know, make it a little puffy. That's one way of doing it. So you can add some volume that way. You can also, of course, go to sculpting and grab like this inflate, and if you wanted to make something more cartoony, you know, you could do that. Maybe you want to do a cartoony hand. You get the idea, but that's essentially the process of rigging the hand, and I have my symmetry on, so it's not cooperating. But rigging the hand and you know, putting it in different positions. So this is, now I'm just having fun. All right, so I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you next one. Peace.